Let me, Frank, show you the kind of verbal onslaught that the men and women of the FBI have endured. And we have no reason to believe this will abate, but this is how Trump's allies describe the court-approved search of Mar-a-Lago.
This is Gestapo crap, and it will not stand.
The idea that you're an FBI agent and you're given this warrant to serve against President Trump that you know is spurious, that is a hatchet job, that is Gestapo Stasi tactics.
They raided our president's home. There is no going back from this, everybody.
Again, none of those statements are rooted in fact. The FBI workforce doesn't have the ability to set the record straight, or chose not to. I suppose they could have if they wanted to, but every person seems to overlearn the lessons of the last person Trump fired. And so Chris Wray was maybe infamously or famously mum, only spoke when under oath up on Capitol Hill, and did defend the Bureau's mission. But those attacks are against not Chris Wray specifically or singularly, but against the workforce. And I wonder how the FBI rank and file are feeling today, Frank, if you've heard from any of them.
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. First, let me share with you that just this week, 2 assistant directors have announced their retirements. They were eligible for retirement, but they weren't mandatory. They didn't have to go, but they're going. And the private sector security world will be much better for having them. But the resumes are all out there, particularly at headquarters and the executive ranks. But the field now is rather nervous. They're wondering if this is going, they're hoping this isn't going to, these changes, this craziness isn't going to affect case openings and case closings in the field. Somehow, magically, the U.S. attorneys that Trump will appoint throughout the United States will somehow be really nice people who are loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law. I hope they're right. I fear that they're wrong. And I think the changes we've heard today are just the beginning. The guardrails aren't there. That people think, oh, there's all kinds of laws that will prevent illegal spying and wiretapping. No, not really. No, there are Attorney General guidelines. Many of them came out of the Church Committee after J. Edgar Hoover's abuses. But we just learned this week, Nicole, of a DOJ IG report that says that during the first Trump term, they inappropriately obtained the records of 2 sitting members of Congress and 43 staffers. And guess who else? Kash Patel. So, and they did it wrong. They did it inappropriately. They didn't follow the rules. So, yeah, he did it before. He'll do it again in droves. And one last thing, and I'm sure I'll go just keep going later. Kash Patel, the nominee to replace Wray, had to be granted criminal immunity by the Department of Justice so that he would talk about the Mar-a-Lago documents case. I'm not sure he's going to pass the FBI background investigation.
Well, you bring us, Frank, to John Bolton's warning today in the Wall Street Journal. Let me read more from that to you, Mary McCord. John Bolton writing this, quote, in neither case was he in charge of a directorate during my tenure as National Security Advisor or thereafter, as he contends in his memoir and elsewhere. He reported to senior directors in both cases and had defined responsibilities. His puffery was characteristic of the resume inflation we had detected when Trump pressed him on us. We found he had exaggerated his role in cases he worked on as a Justice Department lawyer before joining Mr. Nunes's committee staff. Given the sensitivity of the NSC's responsibilities, problems of credibility or reliability would ordinarily disqualify any job applicant. And Mary, let me just, so this doesn't ever look like a single sort of conflict between 2 former Trump national security officials, let me show you what former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, also one of Trump's former national security officials, had to say about Kash Patel.
We were trying to rescue an American in West Africa who had been captured by, we believe, terrorists and whose life was in danger. So we sent our special operators abroad to rescue that person. They were in the air. We had launched them. I had launched them on the premise that we had airspace clearance into that country. to conduct the operation. It was information given by allegedly Kash Patel to Tony Tata, who was worked for me in OSD policy. And we found out hours later, as we were about to cross into that territory, that it was not true, that the State Department had not got that clearance. And so for a moment in time there, at least an hour, it jeopardized the mission.
Mary, your reaction to all of this?
That's such a concrete example, right, of the danger. I have no personal knowledge of that incident, but just taking the former defense secretary at his word, think about the ramifications. You have somebody who our allies abroad very well may not trust because of that incident, and of course, because of other things, such as his claims that Donald Trump engaged in massive declassification of some of the highest level national security information, classified information just before his departure from office, something that I think most people don't believe is true and was contested by others within the White House, including the White House counsel's office. But even if it had been true, that's how carelessly he felt about national security secrets, sources and methods, relationships with our allies, our nuclear weapons program. Those are things that he cavalierly suggested Donald Trump had used mental telepathy to declassify. So I think the former defense secretary's comments, as well as John Bolton's comments, should really cause a whole lot of concern among not only the American public, but the members of the Senate, whose responsibility is to confirm the president's nominee for FBI director. And I would like to reflect back on the 1970s, the Senate Judiciary Committee that engaged in the hearings that resulted in the passage of this 10-year non-renewable tenure for the FBI director. There were two goals, and both went toward there never, ever being a partisan FBI director who was part of just the president's own, personal entourage, if you will. The two goals were to insulate the FBI director through that non-renewable term from political pressure by the president or senior officials in the executive branch, eliminate any motive to curry favor for maybe a second appointment or another term, and secondly, to prevent the FBI director from becoming too independent, too non-responsive, too powerful, as many said that believed that Director Hoover had become. So those things are those goals are completely undermined by not only Director Wray capitulating and resigning before he is forced out of that position. And I do respect the director. I just disagree, as do your other guests today, Frank and John, that was the right thing to do, and also would be completely undermined by the president appointing somebody like Kash Patel and by the Senate confirming someone like him. The Senate has to take this extremely seriously.
Michael Steele, I'll let you answer whether or not you think they will.
Probably not. I think there's nervousness about challenging Donald Trump beyond Matt Gaetz. There's going to be a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of, let me, take close account of what, the nominee has said about this, if they're Kash Patel or that, if they're, someone else. And the reality of it is, the Senate probably doesn't want to exercise its independent constitutional responsibilities of advise and consent and say to the president, which they should be saying now, not waiting until you get to the inauguration, not waiting until you get into the process of actually having the hearings, but saying now to the president, Mr. President, we got you. You're a man. We love you, but you can't send us anything like this. So we're going to advise you not to do this. And so we're not going to consent on these three, Gabby, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel, and Seth Hegseth, but send us someone that we can pass with no noise and no drama. Trump's not going to do that because he wants the noise, he wants the drama, he loves the conflict, and he wants to test just how loyal you are. And that's the thing, Nicole. Every day is another test of loyalty. That's the thread that runs through all of this. Every day is another test. every moment is another opportunity for Donald Trump to hear you say something, not respond the way he thinks you should, or even look funny on TV, right? And for him to go, you know what, just not feeling that person anymore. And so they're more concerned about that than they are the very things that we've heard from, our guests here today in terms of what this moment means. I agree. Director Wray should not have resigned. He should have stayed in the job and said, fire me, because I'm going to stand as a guard at the portal for the men and women who serve in this building and around the country. And we're not the personal puppets of that serve at the whims of a particular president or a particular presidential nominee. But what we've seen, last point, is this has been a very interesting transition from my perspective, because I've watched official Washington, including this White House, treat Trump as if he's already president.
Yes. Yeah.
He's off doing foreign trips. Mm-hmm. He's having meetings. And Joe Biden is just sitting there in the White House or in Delaware or whatever, putting out here that or the other thing. Or when he does engage, as we saw with the Syria episode this weekend, it's like, okay, so what does Donald Trump think? And so this is the problem, that we've now gotten to a point where we just embrace all of this as just normal Trump stuff. We're back in this world again 4 years later, and here we are.
It's the opposite of how President Obama governed between Election Day in 2016 and Donald Trump's first inauguration in 2017.